I hope you find it entertaining, because I'm already bored.
Hello everybody, welcome back to another brand new episode of Business Blaze. Winter is coming, and so you'll notice today that I'm not wearing a t-shirt. I'm wearing a hoodie. It's the boy with the blaze. You can get this as a hoodie. You can actually get most of the merch as a hoodie, which is fantastic as we move into the colder months. This video is brought to you by Magic Spoon, who make breakfast cereals. But I have to say, I mostly just use them as snacks. I've been having this one. I'm not even sure what flavor this is. I've got like 4 boxes of this stuff. This one's just, I think it's just frosted. I don't think it has a flavor. I'm not gonna shove this in my mouth. Whoops. I'm gonna have to pick those up later. Magic Spoon make healthy cereal that tastes great too. You can get shipping if you use the link below. Woohoo! More on them in a bit. I'm actually gonna take this hoodie off because I think this mic's gonna be getting all f***ed up by brushing against the fabric. So we're gonna go t-shirted. I guess I could have worn merch under the merch, but I didn't. Disappointing. What happens here is I am your boy with the blaze, as the hoodie implicated. Danny writes me a script. I read said script. Afterwards, Sam, our resident memologist, resident in the basement, along with Danny, edits this thing and adds some wonderful memes. So let's jump in. This is Rivalries, Adidas versus Puma, and I remember this. I said to Danny, hey Danny, do me Rivalries, Nike versus Adidas, because that's what I thought it was. And Danny's like, Simon, I don't think Nike and Adidas had a particularly big rivalry. Did you mean Puma? And I was like, that's what I said, Danny! And he was like, you didn't. And then I gave him some lashes. If you ever find yourself in the German town of Herzogenaurach, not far from the city of Nuremberg, you could be forgiven for believing that the small population of locals have no faces. Oh my god. Or at least they have something very wrong with their necks. This is because you're wandering through the cobbled streets of the town of Bent Necks. The locals are likely to check the brands of your footwear before they decide whether you're worthy of their attention. What is going on? Fortunately, this unusual approach of greeting a stranger is not so common in recent years, but it was far more of a problem in the last century, when the small town was split in half by fierce, divided loyalties between 2 footwear brands, Adidas and Puma. I thought these were aren't these Asian companies? Why is this town in Germany up in arms about it? Who cares? Who cares about shoes? All of these the people who are super into sneakers and all of this it's like yeah, this pair of Air Nikes or whatever, it costs £1,000. It's just, but it looks awful. It's like a giant bright shoe that seems to come halfway up your ankle, like a boot, but it's a sneaker. What the fuck? Who wears this? Why?
It's called style.
It's ugly as sin. Just get a normal pair of shoes. It was a split in the fabric of the town created by a mysterious rift between 2 brothers, which would go on to shape the future of the sports footwear industry, for better and maybe for worse. It's a story that's, and also just in general, people who are divided between, I mentioned on a recent video, Android and iPhone, Nike and Adidas, or I believe Americans say Adidas. We say Adidas. I don't know why we pronounce all of these sports brands different in the UK, but we do. It's really, this whole thing, it's or Mercedes or BMW, these kind of big rivalries, and people get really into one side. And I'm like, who cares? Why do you care so much? It was a split in the fabric of the town created by a mysterious rift between 2 brothers, which would go on to shape the future of the sports footwear industry, for better and maybe for worse. Wait, are Adidas and Puma German? Because, I mean, I don't care about any of this stuff, so it wouldn't surprise me to find out they were, but I really thought they were Asian, because I read that Phil Knight book, Shoe Dog. I vaguely remember that, but maybe I'm wrong. It's a story that spans over just a century, which by a staggering coincidence is the same amount of time it felt like it actually took to write this script, considering that Simon originally asked me to cover the rivalry between Reebok and Nike. What are you talking about, Danny? No, I didn't. Before we moved on to Nike versus Adidas, and then Adidas versus Puma. Oh yeah, there was an extra step, sorry Danny. Which has far more juicy bits in it and isn't all about Kanye West. Okay. Adidas and Puma are actually the cracked halves of the same family business, which was doing pretty well for a while until the family started to fall out big time. The original company was founded by the two Dassler brothers, older brother Rudolf and younger brother Adolf. Oh no. It's he was born before the 1930s. My neighbor in my old apartment building was called Adolf. He was really old, and he was really old because he was definitely born before the 1930s. The latter preferred to be called Addy in later years to avoid association with a certain other Adolf. But as the older brother only shares his name and with a famous prancing reindeer, we'll stick with Rudolf for him. good. Born and raised in the tiny town of Herzogenaurach, which had a population of 3,500 at the turn of the 20th century, their father had only recently turned his hand to shoemaking for the first time, whilst their mother ran a popular laundry. So they are German companies. Who cares? Not me. In their younger years, Rudolf and Adi Dassler used to help out in the laundry and became known as the Laundry Boys, which sounds like the worst idea for a cartoon series ever. It does. It doesn't sound like, it sounds like the name of a weird band as well. Like the Beach Boys. Like a version of the Beach Boys. Version of the Beach Boys. Go, get around, I get around. The outbreak of the First World War obviously shook up this happy family scene and perhaps even laid down the foundations for future family relations between the Dasslers. Our older brother Rudolf was drafted to fight in the war while Adi was too young to serve and stayed at home learning the craft of shoemaking from his dad. It was during this period that Adi became one of the first shoemakers to seriously consider the advantages of creating specialized shoes for individual sports and came up with a design for one of the world's very first spiked sneakers for track and field events. When Rudolf returned home from the war, he initially had plans to become a policeman, but he was so impressed by his younger brother's budding business venture that he decided to join forces and launch a new company, Sportfabrik Gebrüder Dassler, or GEDA for short. Yeah, that's easier. Someone once said to me, Simon, with the pronunciations of like the foreign names, just attempt to do the accent for it and say the words like that. So it's like Sportfabrik Gebrüder Dassler, and people, and then your sarcastic German accent actually does the pronunciation better. And I'm like, yeah, but it does sound a bit racist, doesn't it? I feel like you can get away with it for some countries, like Italy, Germany, Russia. But if you started doing it for like Asian countries, people would be like, Simon, that's racist. I'd be like, yeah, I can't disagree. Initially, they ran the business from the back of their mum's laundry premises. Young Adi was the quieter of the two brothers. He would mainly work on the design and crafting of new sneakers, while the more extroverted older brother Rudolf would handle the sales and distribution and general management and shouting. Shouting is an important part of any business. Right, Daddy! Didn't take long for the Dassler brothers to find modest local success with their new ranges of spiked sneakers, and they moved out of the back of the laundry and into a fancy new factory within just a couple of years. But their biggest moment was to come during the 1936 Summer Olympics in Berlin. Hitler had hoped that the Berlin Olympics would help to illustrate the superiority of the Aryan race, but he hadn't banked on the incredible success of the African-American track and field star Jesse Owens, cocking up his plan a bit by romping to victory with 4 gold medals and grabbing all the attention of the media. It's awesome. It's like, the Aryan race is the best! Adolf, why is this black dude, why is he winning all the medals? I don't know! I guess I was wrong. If only.
Es ist unmöglich unter diesen Umständen zu führen.
Now, it's worth pointing out at this stage that both Rudolf and Adi Dassler were, like many other Germans at the time, proud members of the Nazi Party. Exactly how devoted they were is a cause of something that would later be investigated and became one of the most important elements of the brotherly meltdown. This is always the case. It's like, yeah, there's some good guy in history. It's like, he was a Nazi because he had to be. He was forced to be. But while Hitler was most likely seething with rage at the success of Jesse Owens, Rudolf and Adi were probably giving themselves a bit of a pat on the back. Because Adi had predicted the triumphant results from the athlete, and before the Olympics had properly got underway, he managed to track him down in the Olympic Village and wordlessly hand him a pair of GEDA shoes with dark spikes and 2 leather straps on the sides.
Es wurde ein ungeheurer Verrat geübt am deutschen Volke.
Hitler will be like, he was successful because of the Aryan German shoes. He wasn't, Hitler, chill out. Jesse seemed happy to accept this shrewd gift and wore the shoes during all 4 gold medal victories in the 100-meter dash, long jump, 200-meter sprint, and relay. In the past, I feel like the Olympics was a lot more casual because today, surely this, the Olympian who's going to win 4 gold medals, he'll definitely have some sort of like sponsorship agreement. He'll have like 1,000 pair of shoes that are worn in. He's probably got people wearing in his shoes for him. They've been like scientifically tested. They've shaped to his feet. Back in the day, they're like, what, you didn't bring shoes with you? Suddenly, GEDA sneakers were in the global spotlight for the first time, and sales shot up to 200,000 a year. This was the company's time to shine, and they were poised to dominate the industry. But then another world war came along, and this one really cocked things up big time. The Dassa's factory was forced to abandon shoe production and produce anti-tank weapons instead for the duration of the war. That's a bit different, isn't it? By the time the war was over and shoe production was finally allowed to recommence in 1949, the two brothers had fallen out so badly that they split the Gedder company in two and barely ever spoke to each other again. Adi kept the original factory under the name of Adidas, while Rudolf set up shop at the other end of the town with Puma. But what exactly had happened to cause the rift that would end up splitting an entire town in two? Why does the whole town care? Why? It would be like if there were two pubs in a village, and some people went to one and some people went to the other. No one gives a fuck. Although I suppose if there were two football clubs, people would be beating the absolute shit out of each other, but that's just because football fans are hooligans. Smash that dislike button. Soccer fans, for my dear American friends. But what exactly happened to cause the rift that would end up splitting a whole town in two? We said that. There are plenty of theories and oft-reported stories that all boil down to a simple understanding in a bomb shelter. Adi and his wife had climbed into the shelter during an Allied bombing raid in 1943 to find that Rudolf and his wife were already taking cover inside. Upon spotting his brother, Adi is reported to have said, "The pig dogs are back." Adi claims he was referring to the RAF, who were currently trying to bomb them all to bits, and this sounds quite reasonable to me. But Rudolf was convinced the comment was directed at him and his wife. Okay, someone's a snowflake. However, the truth seems to be a lot more complicated than that, and the tensions had been brewing in the Dasta family for quite some time, even before the breakout of war. The two brothers shared the same villa with their respective wives and children, but it was far from a happy household, and it seems that the two wives often clashed over suspicions that the other husband was trying to take over the whole company. When war broke out, young Adi was called up for military service, while Rudolf was allowed to stay at home this time and oversee the weapon production at the family. Adi only served 3 months in service before he managed to get an exemption and was allowed to return home, and this was possibly helped along by Rudolf pulling a few strings and insisting that his younger brother was needed at the factory. I'd be like, dude, going to war or working in a factory, I'd be like, oh, thank God. So, I didn't want to go to war. But during this short period while Rudolf was solely in charge, their sister Marie had asked him if her two sons could work in the factory to avoid getting sent into battle. Rudolf point blank refused the request, growling that there was enough family problems at the company. I'd be like, thanks, Rudolf. Now my kids are going to go off to war and die, you prick. Just because you're slightly uncomfortable. Marie's two sons, the nephews of Rudolf and Adi, were sent to war and never came. Oh my God, they actually died and never came back home. Yeah, I wonder why there was a rift in the family, Rudolf. You knob. Adi was reportedly furious about Rudolf's decision on his return. I wonder why. Maybe it's because his kids were dead. It's like, yeah, well, it was either the thing about him essentially killing his children, or it was the pig dog thing. I'm gonna guess it was the killing the kids. Rudolf can't have been too happy when, after trying so hard to get his brother back home, he found himself getting called up for military service in 1943, and he wouldn't return home for another 3 years. Even after the war was over, he would spend the last year of that period in a prisoner of war camp, seething in frustration that his younger brother had taken complete control of the factory. Not feeling too sorry for him right now, it's gotta be said. Before the breakout of war, also because he was a Nazi. Before the breakout of war, Rudolf and Adi's families had often engaged in disputes about which side of the family were most devoted supporters of the Nazi cause. Oh, the past. No, I'm a bigger Nazi. I am the best Nazi. I make these beautiful shoes that have swastika patterns all over them. After the war, they were having very similar arguments in reverse, because this time they were facing the denazification panel. Now they were insisting that the other side were the bigger Nazis, while they were only a tiny bit Nazi. It's like, no, it's not this. This is not a shoe with swastikas. This is a shoe with ancient Buddhist symbol. The biggest concern for both brothers was that if they were classified as serious Nazi offenders, they would face prison sentences and lose their stake in the family business. But both Rudolf and Adi also realized that if the other brother was to get thrown in the slammer, this could prove a handy route to gaining complete control of the business. Oh, guys, this was quite a fallout when you're accusing each other of being Nazis. Even though before you were like, Nazis are great. So Rudolf claimed that while he had been held as prisoner of war, Adi had been producing German weapons for his own profit and giving out strong political speeches on the work floor. In retaliation, Adi claimed that Rudolf had been secretly working for the Gestapo while he was in the service. Ultimately, the authorities decided that they couldn't really be asked in pursuing either of these two clowns, and they were allowed to reopen the factory for shoe production. The rift between the two brothers had now understandably become so great that they refused to work with each other and split the company in half. half in 1949. The Gator employees were allowed to decide which half of the new company they'd like to work for. The majority of the sales staff decided to go with the older sales and management brother Rudolph and join him at the other side of town at the Puma factory, but the remaining 2/3 of the staff decided to stay put with the younger design and development brother Adi, now rebranded as the Adidas factory. Wow, so Puma and Adidas both like OG Nazi companies. There you go. I mean, allegedly. What? Even the by Nike. Nike. Even though the new rival factories were situated at the opposite end of town and separated by the river Orach, which ran through the middle of the town in German that I don't want to try pronouncing again, it's worth remembering that the town was very small and there was only a couple of miles between the two. Yet in many ways, the town of bent necks, or the town of lowered gaze, felt divided by something that almost felt like an invisible Berlin Wall. And you know something that will bring us all together? Today's glorious sponsor, Magic Spoon. So look, everyone likes cereal. If you don't like cereal, I'm judging you, because there's nothing better than cracking open the cupboard, pouring a big bowl of cereal that's probably an unhealthy amount of sugar, splashing loads of milk on it, and munching that all the way down. Now, as glorious as cereal is, I just don't eat cereal because I don't need all that sugar in my life. This is how I make my money. I gotta look good. Simon, shave your beard, you monster. But the great thing about Magic Spoon is there is 0 grams of sugar in this, which is obvious. It says it right there on the top. 0 grams of sugar, 3 grams of net carbs, and 11 grams of protein. Now, my general dieting thing is like, I just don't eat too much sugar. Simple, and you won't get too fat. Don't eat too many carbohydrates, you won't get too fat. And it's pretty good. And protein I know is the good one. Like, I know I should focus on my diet a little bit more, but Magic Spoon make it easy because there's just no sugar and lots of protein. I know that's less of the bad thing and more of the good thing, so I can become mega ripped. Not a guarantee, obviously. Also, you might be thinking, well, Simon, that might be well and good. It contains 0 grams of sugar and 11 grams of protein, but it probably tastes like a goblin's ass. And I'm like, well, good news for you. It actually tastes amazing. So good, in fact, that I've had that one open and I'm just constantly snacking on that. I know I should eat it like cereal, and they probably even say that I should eat it like cereal, but honestly, I just spent most of my time snacking on it. Just like all day long. Next, I'm gonna crack this cocoa one, which I haven't even opened yet, but I'm excited to. There's some stuff I actually do have to say to you guys. There are 4 flavors available. This one is cocoa, this one is fruity, the one I had open earlier is sugar, or not sugar, it's got a specific name, what the is it called? Frosted. And this one is blueberry. It's keto friendly, obviously, gluten-free, low carb, GMO free. Anyway, click the link below or go to magicspoon.com/blaze to grab a variety pack, bada boom, and get free shipping. Plus 100% happiness guarantee, so if you don't like it, you get your money back. But you will like it. It's 0 sugar, but it tastes awesome. And let's just get back into the video, shall we? Thank you, Magic Spoon, for sponsoring. Huzzah! By the 1950s, at least one person in each household in town worked at either the Adidas factory or the Puma factory. And families associated with one firm avoided any contact with families associated with the other firm. They would patronize completely separate bars, bakeries, butchers, banks, barbershops, beer merchants, and belly button piercing studios. Wow, and that's just the bees, Danny. And there were even 2 completely separate football teams for the tiny town with separate sponsorships from one of the 2 shoe giants. The rivalry was savage. Wow, yeah, the football hooligans, they'll be beating the shit, they'll be stabbing each other in this. I mean, no, they do that anyway. What's more violent than stabbing? They'll be shooting each other in this one. The idea of a family member marrying into the family of the other brand was considered to be almost sacrilege, and tongues would certainly wag with fury. Oh, it's like the Montagues and the Capulets. So exciting. The only guy in the whole town who could get away with wearing both brands was the mayor. He naturally had to be quite diplomatic under these tense conditions and would often wear odd shoes at official events to ensure that both brands were represented. Oh my god, who cares? How is this so important to you? Aren't you rebuilding after the war? Why? Why do we care? The only other guys who really benefited from the feud were the tradesmen who were fortunate enough to be invited to carry out work at either Adi's or Rudolph's houses. They would deliberately show up in the wrong brands of sneakers, knowing full well that the owner of the house would dish out free pairs because neither brother could bear the thought of having the opposing shoe anywhere in his house. Both brands were keen to adopt a distinctive look for the shoe, so it would always be easy for anyone to spot which brand was being worn by triumphant athletes. Adidas became known for using a color on the 3 straps that was different to the color of the main shoe, and the 3 straps logo would become the signature trademark of Adidas that's still going strong to this day. Of course, because you got the 3 stripes. As a kid, I thought, and I didn't realize it was false, but I thought Adidas stood for All Day I Dream About Sport, but obviously it doesn't. It stands for Adolf. The original logo was designed by Finnish sports brand Karhu Sports, who were paid about €1,600 and 2 bottles of whiskey. Meanwhile, Puma experimented with a few different styles and designs before settling on the form stripe, a horizontal stripe that starts around the back of the shoe and then widens as it moves along the front side before turning down towards the sole. Isn't Puma like a puma head or something? Both companies would experiment for the first time with screw-in studs on football boots during the middle of the decade with game-changing results, although unsurprisingly, there quickly followed arguments as to which brother had actually invented them. Oh my god, I hated playing football at school. It would suck, and we'd have to have these football boots, or football studs as they're called. They're these dumb shoes which have these little buttons on the bottom so you don't slip around in the mud. And I'm like, why the fuck are we going out in the mud? It's cold. I don't like it. And I don't like kicking the ball. And I don't like being tackled. And I don't like tackling. I don't like it. I always just wanted to be in defense, because then it'd be like, you don't really have to do anything, and if the ball comes, you just be like, you make a half-assed effort to stop it, and then be like, oh, I hope the goalie does his job, because, yeah, f this. There's one thing I care about less than mobile phones, like iPhone, Android, and all that shit. It's sports. But we could stand here all day and talk about shoes. They're almost irrelevant in any battle between any company involved in the sneaker wars. It's not so much about the shoes themselves, it's more about the profile of the athlete you can persuade to step into them. Puma was the first of the two to get a gold medal when the 1,500-meter runner Josie Barthel of Luxembourg won gold while wearing Puma at the 1952 Olympics in Helsinki, Finland. But Adidas scored a bigger business goal during the 1954 World Cup in Bern, Switzerland. Very little been expected from the West Germany team, but Adidas had taken the opportunity to sponsor the team and provide them with uniforms and boots. Against all odds, West Germany battled through to the final, but were still very much the underdogs against the heavily tipped opponents in the final, Hungary. Most German fans were just hoping their team would put on a half-decent show and avoid getting utterly humiliated. Just before the final, Adi Dassler unveiled his new secret weapon for West Germany, his new screw-in studs, which allowed various lengths of spikes to be screwed on to suit the football pitch. The team ended up coming back from behind to win the match 3-2 in what has become known as the Miracle of Bern, and West Germany's manager declared Adi Dassler to be a key contributor towards his team winning the World Cup for the first time.
Fascinating. I'm sure this is one of the most exciting moments in World Cup history, and I'm just like, I could not give less of a shit. I just couldn't care. If England were in the final since the first time since, I don't know, it's been a while. I'd be like, people would be like, you're not watching that? I'd be like, obviously not. I've got anything better. I've got better things to do. And literally anything would be better. Listening to ETA go on about 5G COVID conspiracy theories would be better. At least that would be remotely entertaining. One enterprising German athlete tried his hand at cashing in with both companies during the 1960s Summer Olympics in Rome, but his attempts fell a bit flat. Armin Harry had previously worn Adidas during sporting events and had asked Adi for official sponsorship, but Adi had refused. Instead, Armin turned to Rudolf, who agreed to give the athlete financial compensation if he wore Puma during his events and any subsequent appearances on the medal's podium. Armin went on to win gold in the 100-meter sprint while wearing Puma, but in a bid to get cash from both companies, he sneakily switched over to Adidas when he took the podium. What he actually ended up doing was pissing off both companies so much that he didn't receive a cent from either of them. Yeah, dude. It seems like I'm sure there was a contract, and I'm sure you broke it. Rudolph scored a major victory later in 1970. This script has turned into being way too much about sport for my liking. I hope you find it entertaining, because I'm already bored. Rudolph scored a major victory later on in 1970 when he convinced the Brazilian football legend I know it's Pelé, to wear Puma, is it Pelé? to wear Puma during the World Cup. Pelé led Brazil to victory that year, but just before the opening whistle of the final, he asked the referee to hold fire while he seemingly innocently laced up his boots. The eyes of the world were on Pelé as he bent down and took the time lacing up his distinctive Puma boots. Of course, it was cleverly planned and probably heavily paid marketing ploy, which saw a significant surge in Puma sales shortly thereafterwards. Look, sports companies, if you'd like me to wear your shoes while I record business plays, I'm open to discussion. Maybe you'd like to branch out into the people who don't like sport realm.
I'm there. I'm there for you. And obviously you'll never be able to see them, but you'll just have to trust them fulfilling my contractual obligations. I probably won't be, because right now I'm absolutely barefoot. I mean, not barefoot, I'm wearing socks, obviously, you just saw that. Over the next few decades, big names like Muhammad Ali and Franz Beckenbauer, never heard of Franz Beckenbauer. I know who Muhammad Ali is, he's pretty famous, but Franz Beckenbauer? Nope. They chose Adidas while the likes of Maradona and Boris Becker went with Puma. I know Boris Becker, actually. Tennis is the one sport that I find quite acceptable. Maradona, no idea. But it has to be said, people were like, in a previous video, there was some famous athlete. I don't remember who it was, but I said she was a she and it was a dude. And it's like some famous British athlete. And I'm like, oh. Because they had a girl's name. But it has to be said that Adidas were always at least one league above Puma. Although Puma enjoyed sponsorship success in track and field events, for a long time they were primarily seen as a strong national brand, whereas Adidas developed into a major European company. It could be said that the fierce rivalry between the two helped to spur on innovation in the industry. But it could also be argued that they were so busy competing with each other that they took their eyes off the ball when it came to other potential rivals emerging on the scene, like Nike and Reebok. When Nike first launched their new lightweight sneakers in the 1970s, both Adidas and Puma dismissed them as crap, flimsy slippers and went back to scrapping between themselves. Nike is now the biggest sportswear manufacturer on the planet by far. I'm glad Nike came in and crushed these guys. They sound like dicks. Adidas currently in second place after finally taking notice of Reebok and buying them out in 2005, while Puma have been pushed down to third place. It's interesting to ponder how things may have looked very different if the original Gita company had maintained a united front against potential new rivals instead of splitting up and focusing their efforts against each other. Rudolf Dassler died in 1974, although Adi was invited to talk to his older brother on his deathbed, he declined the offer. His own death came just 4 years later in 1978. Yeah, I think there are some things you can't forgive. It's like, yeah, Rudolph, you didn't save my kids from dying in the war. By the end of the 1980s, the Dassler family had lost control of both companies following a downhill period, which was again made more difficult by the emergence of their new rivals and the fact that all the cool kids had moved over to Nike's Air Jordans. Oh, Air Jordans. Not Nike Airs or whatever they're called. Puma had been passed over to Rudolph's son Armin against his father's dying wishes, as Rudolph thought his son was a bit of a plank. Even though Armin had been written out of his father's will, he managed to seize control of the company over a legal technicality. However, by 1987, Deutsche Bank had seized control of Puma to stop it from going under and promptly fired Armin. Incredibly, it was a very similar story over at Adidas, as Adi disowned his son Horst, who at one point was diverting millions of dollars worth of Adidas money into shell companies. Feeling certain that his own father would inevitably fire him one day for all the money he stole from the company. Shocker! Horst was building up an illegal nest egg to prepare for that fateful day. Despite the fact that this was exposed, Horst continued working for the company and then battled with his sisters over control of the company after his father's death. He won the battle when his mother sided with him over his sisters against his father's dying wishes. Again, let's just repeat, I'm glad that Nike is now king. Because also Phil Knight is a bit of an absolute legend. Horst died young of cancer in 1987, and within a couple of years the struggling Adidas company had been bought out by the French industrialist Bernard Tapit. After over 40 years, the Dassler War was finally over. Although that small town of Herzogenaurach is still divided by a river, the divisions in brand loyalty have thankfully mellowed in more recent years. Nowadays, the locals of the town of bent necks are more likely to poke fun at people wearing the opposing brand rather than avoid all social contact with them. On United Nations Peace Day in 2009, a friendly football match took place involving employees of both brands in what some felt was an official truce. I'm disappointed that they chickened out just a little bit by avoiding a direct contest between Adidas and Puma. Instead, the match involved the management of both brands pitted against the workers of both brands. The big bosses won 7-5. But the feud between Rudolph and Adi Dassler may well jog on into eternity. They've both been buried in the same town cemetery in blah 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 blah. But at the exact opposite ends. Fascinating. Way too much sports. If you enjoyed this video though, please do smash that like button below. Remember to support the show. Get yourself some fantastic, that was the right way up, boom! Get yourself some fantastic cereal from Magic Spoon, link below, and thank you for watching. Nazis are great.